Nobody expected Eddie Murphy to take the stand that day. Day 12 of the Diddy trial was supposed to be just another routine court session. Legal motions, paperwork, a quiet lull in a trial that had already made headlines for its explosive allegations. Reporters were barely paying attention. Some were scrolling through their phones. Even Diddy looked relaxed, chatting quietly with his legal team, until it happened. The courtroom doors didn't open like they usually did. This time, a side door creaked open, and through it walked Eddie Murphy. There was no announcement, no prior notice, just a sudden shift in the room's energy so sharp you could feel it in your chest. Journalists sat up, the jury leaned forward, and Diddy, once composed, froze in place. Because nobody knew Eddie was coming. Not the press, not even Diddy's defense attorneys. And in that single moment, it became clear, whatever Murphy had to say wasn't just a character reference or a celebrity cameo. He was here for something much bigger. And as he made his way to the witness stand, his face calm but unreadable, the room held its breath. Eddie adjusted the mic slowly, looked over at Diddy, and spoke 7 words that would shatter the illusion Hollywood had spent decades protecting. I've been quiet for decades. Until now. No one blinked. No one dared move. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Every word that followed would peel back the carefully staged mask of fame, money, and power, and expose something far darker underneath. And this was only the beginning. Back in 2006, Eddie Murphy was riding the crest of a career rebirth. Studios were calling again. Roles were rolling in. There were whispers of award nominations, new projects, and multi-million-dollar deals. After years of up and down press, he was finally back in control, and Hollywood wanted him front and center again. Then came the call. It wasn't through his agent. No emails. Just a direct line from a well-known producer who didn't give a name, just an address in the Hollywood Hills, and a quiet invitation. Come by tonight. It's one of those career-making gatherings. Murphy had heard the rumors before. Everyone had. The secret parties. The unlisted nights where phones were confiscated and cameras were banned. Where stars and execs mingled behind closed doors, and reputations were traded like poker chips. This wasn't new. But something about this invite felt different. He went anyway. Curiosity mixed with caution. I figured it'd be the usual, he told the courtroom. Music, drinks, people flexing. Nothing I hadn't seen before. But the moment he pulled up to the estate, that illusion shattered. The place wasn't just big, it was fortified. An iron gate sealed the front, only opening after scanning his biometric data. Valets dressed in identical black suits greeted him without a word. One took his phone. Another handed him a small card. No instructions. No agenda. Just 5 cryptic words printed in silver ink. Tonight, be who you really are. He stepped inside expecting glitz, champagne, Hollywood bravado. Instead, what he found was silence. Not just quiet, dead quiet. No music. No laughter. Just the soft murmur of whispers, the low hum of tension, and the distinct feeling that everyone inside was watching, or being watched. The lighting was low, the decor too perfect. Celebrities wandered the room in slow, controlled movements, like chess pieces on a board none of them had designed. I've been to 100 parties, Eddie said. But this wasn't a party. It was a ritual. Then he saw them, a man in a robe, and a woman in stilettos, walking silently into a hallway. No words, no expression, just obedience. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't about celebration, Eddie said. This was about power. Something about the air shifted, and in that moment, he realized this night wasn't going to be forgotten. This was the kind of experience you either survived or were consumed by. But the real test hadn't even begun yet, because Diddy hadn't shown up. Not yet. Eddie didn't leave right away. He could have. Every fiber of his gut was telling him something was off, that this wasn't a party in the normal sense. But something deeper pulled him in. A need to understand. A need to know why people with money, fame, and power were treating this night like something sacred or dangerous. I told myself I just wanted to see it for what it was, Eddie said in court. And God forgive me, I did. As he wandered deeper into the house, the layout started to feel less like a mansion and more like a maze. Hallways curved in unnatural ways. Rooms were dimly lit, each space eerily quiet. There was no music playing, no clinking glasses or forced laughter. Just eyes, watching, waiting. And then, From across the room, Eddie saw someone he hadn't seen in years. Diddy! He didn't strut in. He didn't make a scene. He just appeared, walking up with the calm confidence of a man who owned more than just the house. He threw his arm around Eddie's shoulder like they were lifelong friends and said, "Brother, it's about time you came home." Murphy smiled faintly at the memory, a reflex, not a fondness. He didn't mean back to Hollywood, he clarified. He meant this. Whatever this was. Eddie described Diddy's demeanor as smooth, collected, but ice-cold behind the eyes. He was proud of something, Eddie said. But it wasn't the house. It wasn't the art. It was what was happening inside those rooms. As they walked, Diddy whispered about the guests. That guy just greenlit a $200 million movie. That one? He eats out of my hand now. It wasn't bragging. It was inventory. He wasn't describing people. He was claiming them. And then they stopped. In front of a thick wooden door, sealed shut. Diddy turned to Murphy and said something he would never forget. This is where the choices get made. You want to stay funny and broke? Or you want to level up? Murphy tried to laugh it off, pretended it was just another Hollywood joke. But Diddy didn't laugh. He just stared. And through the narrow crack in that door, Eddie saw something chilling. A camera tripod. Not hidden. Just there. Waiting. He watched as people entered looking tense. Some exited beaming. Others looked like they just survived something they couldn't name. Eddie didn't go in. He told the court he backed away, faked the need for a drink, and stepped into the lounge again. And as he left, Diddy just smiled and said, "No rush. We're all family here." That moment, that look, was the dividing line. The point where Eddie realized this wasn't a party. It was an initiation. And he had just been invited to make a decision that would change everything. What came next would confirm every fear he had tried to ignore. It didn't take long for Eddie to realize there was no easy way out. He stepped outside, trying to catch his breath, just for a moment. But as he reached the exit, a woman blocked his path. Elegant, expressionless, holding a drink. "You're not done yet, are you?" she asked softly, handing him the glass. Her voice wasn't threatening. It was casual, but something in her tone made it clear, leaving wasn't an option. "Not yet." Eddie turned back and re-entered the main lounge, drink in hand, heart pounding. And that's when everything shifted. They were being gathered. Small groups of guests, handpicked, carefully selected, were ushered toward a hallway in the back. No one protested. No one asked questions. Eddie followed, walking beside celebrities he'd seen on billboards and red carpets. Big names, bigger reputations. They were led into a dimly lit room cloaked in red velvet drapes and candlelight. No cameras now. No phones. Just low, humming silence and a long, polished table at the center of the room. Silver trays lined the top. Every detail was precise, ritualistic. And then Diddy walked in. Not as a guest. Not as a host. As something else entirely. He took his place at the head of the table like he'd done this 100 times before. Calm, collected, fully in control. And then he spoke. "Tonight's about how far you'll go," he said. "Because greatness doesn't come cheap." Eddie scanned the room. Among the guests was a rising action star, someone Murphy initially hesitated to name. But when pressed by the prosecutor, he said it clearly, Dwayne Johnson. A hush fell over the courtroom as he spoke the name. Murphy continued. A glove man placed a tray in front of the rock and slowly lifted the lid. Underneath, pink, raw, still steaming monkey brains. Some in the room laughed nervously. Others looked away in disgust. Diddy, without blinking, leaned forward and said, "Come on, Rock. You eat that. The roll is yours." And after a long pause, Dwayne did. He ate. And when he finished, Diddy clapped like a proud father. "That's what I'm talking about," he said, then turned to the rest of the table. "Who's next?" Eddie's voice cracked slightly in court as he recalled the moment. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, what people were doing to belong. And then Diddy walked toward him. No theatrics, no pretense, just cold eyes and a question that would define the rest of Eddie's career. "You ready, preacher boy?" Eddie looked up, stunned. "I didn't come here for this." Diddy leaned in closer and whispered, "Then why are you here?" That was the moment Eddie Murphy knew. This wasn't about networking. This wasn't even about fame. It was a test. A line drawn in velvet and blood. Step over it, or vanish. And Eddie made his choice. He stood, silent and still, and walked out. Not running, not crying, just gone. I wasn't afraid of what they'd do to me, he told the court. I was afraid of what they could do to others. And as he left that mansion, Diddy's voice echoed behind him. You'll be back, when you're ready to really make it. But Eddie never came back, and he never worked in Hollywood the same way again. Eddie didn't play along, and the consequences hit fast. He didn't get blacklisted overnight. There was no warning, no memo, just silence. Projects he was already cast in, suddenly on hold. Scripts written for him, rewritten. Studio meetings, canceled with no explanation. His agent of 7 years stopped returning calls. Producers who used to praise him wouldn't even make eye contact. Within weeks, Eddie went from in-demand to invisible. And the worst part? Nobody told him why. But he knew. I didn't just walk out of a party, Eddie said in court. I walked out of Hollywood's inner circle, the part no one's allowed to talk about. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. One producer told a colleague, he's not aligned anymore. Aligned with what? Diddy? The rituals? The silence? Eddie didn't say anything publicly. Not yet. He tried to keep working. He wrote scripts, pitched shows, did voiceover gigs, anything to stay creative. But the doors didn't just close. They disappeared. Meetings felt fake. Smiles felt hollow. Everyone acted polite, but nothing moved forward. It's like I was floating just outside the gates, he said, watching everything go on without me. The few responses he did get were coded, polite brush-offs. Studio execs said, it's just bad timing, or we're going in a different direction. But the truth was simpler. He had said no. And in Hollywood, no is the most dangerous word you can say. Eddie didn't need to guess what happened. He lived it. When asked directly in court if he believed he was blacklisted, he didn't hesitate. Yes, and not in some dramatic, headline-grabbing way. In the quietest, most precise way possible. There was no announcement, no firing, just a slow, calculated shutout. A blacklist with no paper trail, only whispers. He explained how it works. No studio head says, ban this person. Instead, there are dinners, private calls, closed-door meetings behind frosted glass. That's where it happens. Someone leans in and says, he's a liability now. And that's all it takes. Eddie told the court about a top executive who told a friend he didn't pass the test. When asked what that meant, the exec just said, he said no when he was supposed to say yes. That's the line. And once you cross it, you're out. Emails shown in court proved it. One had his name next to the words, not aligned. Pass. That phrase, not aligned, kept coming up. Aligned with who? That's when Eddie dropped names. Diddy's on that list, he said. Tyler Perry. Oprah. She helped write it. The room shifted. Reporters typed faster. The jury leaned in. But Eddie was clear. It wasn't about documents or contracts. This list was invisible, but everyone knew it existed. A boundary no one dared cross. Not because of what would be said, but because of what wouldn't be said ever again. Speak against someone on that list? You don't just lose jobs. You lose your name. That's why people protected Diddy. Not just the ones at the parties, but the ones who stayed silent, because they'd built careers on his approval. It wasn't just fear of him, Eddie said. It was fear of what it meant to speak his name. And when asked if he ever confronted anyone else about it, he nodded. A fellow actor told me, you're crossing the line, man. They don't come back for people who cross it. They never spoke again. That's the price. Not public shame. Not cancellation. Just complete, calculated silence. After the blacklist, Eddie went quiet. Not just in Hollywood, but in life. He stopped leaving the house. Days blurred together. He sat alone, replaying that night, not because of what happened to him, but because of what he saw done to others. No one believed him. And worse, if they did, they'd be next. I leaned on my family, he said. My kids saved me. Their laughter reminded me of what was real. He turned to faith, not for show, but survival. I stopped asking God why, he told the court. I started asking when. When was I going to speak? He found peace in silence. But silence came at a cost. When his children asked why he quit acting, he couldn't say, I got tired. Because the truth was, He wasn't willing to lose himself, just to stay famous.